The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, episode 7, lucky number 7, in a week leading up to two huge events in the fight world. In boxing, Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte for the British and Commonwealth heavyweight titles. Plus, in the UFC, Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Two huge occasions and fights which I'm sure we will all be across this weekend. I'm particularly interested in the Conor McGregor UFC bout. I watched his documentary Notorious on a plane to London a couple of months ago, and I was fascinated by him. What an intriguing character. If you get a moment, there's 6 episodes, all about 25 minutes long, and it gives you a real insight into one of the top athletes in the world. Speaking of top athletes, we've got another one here on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. It's the swimmer Nick Gillingham. He won over 17 championship medals. He's been a world record holder, a world champion, and a double Olympic medalist. And it's a really interesting chat with him on the Best in the World. He tells me if there's anything better than winning and how we can learn from defeat. He tells me how he's learned from other athletes such as David Beckham and Michael Phelps. He also talks about the importance of visualization, performance analysis, and goal setting. And he also tells me about when he met Queen Elizabeth II when he was awarded his MBE. All very interesting things to hear from Nick Gillingham. And of course, we're leading up to Christmas. If you've spent your money already, don't worry. I'm going to give you a gift. And that's from today's sponsor, Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/best. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Let me tell you that again. It's www.audibletrial.com/best. Let's hear from one of the best in the world, Nick Gillingham.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
All right, Nick, welcome to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. You may notice my voice is a little bit sore today. That's because I was shouting while playing football yesterday, but we lost. And I felt terrible, and it was very disappointing. And I forgot that I behaved like an 11-year-old when I lost when I got home. How would you react to losing to a big defeat when you did a swimming race?
Initially, there's a lot of upset, sort of mixed emotions. There's frustration, there's anger. There's always a rational reason why. I wouldn't say that there's often disbelief. I was very analytical, so you had a very good idea leading up to a competition how fast you were going to swim, and often the buzzword was fast. The glass is always sort of half full, not half empty. So I had an idea of performance times that I might achieve. I was very goal orientated, and if something didn't go right, it was perhaps half expected. Maybe there was a previous illness or injury, but I would say I was very, very lucky in that respect. I only recall 3 occasions in the 13 years I was with Great Britain where I had either an injury on 2 occasions and tonsillitis on another. So you have to be honest with yourself, and I think there's a realization that today might not be the best day, and then you come back and you work out, well, why did I get injured? Why did I get poorly? Why was I run down? Why did I have to fly out on antibiotics and have tonsils sort of very fire and enlarged? And you realize that maybe the balance in the training program wasn't right. Maybe there wasn't enough rest. It was too high intensity. And so you make adjustments, and then you move forwards with more motivation and a positive frame of mind.
Is there one specific defeat which you particularly learnt from to improve later in your career?
Yeah, I think I mentioned tonsillitis there. I lost the world record after 36 hours in 1989. I took the European title. I beat the Olympic champion, and I got the world record. And 36 hours later, it got dropped from 2:12.90 to 2:12.89 by Mike Barrowman. at the other side of the world. So I went home and just trained like an animal, really. I remember my coach was shouting at me saying, "This is a recovery session, Nick. Let's take it easy." And I'm like, "Recovery? This isn't recovery. There's no time to recover. Let's bang it on out, And training on Christmas Day that year and New Year's Day and through to January 1990, because that was the Commonwealth Games, are very early, you see, in Auckland, so Southern Hemisphere. So I had that sort of 6-month window to try and pull it back, and just got very run down and learned the lesson, really. So I listened to my coach more and more as the years went by.
So is there a better feeling than winning?
That's a very good question, Richard. Is there a better feeling than winning? You see, it's easy to say no, but if I just give a bit of paint a picture on that a little bit. So winning's extraordinary, winning's unusual. If it wasn't, then we'd all win every day, all of the time. So I lost many more races than I ever cared to remember, but on many, many occasions I saw myself as being very successful. So perhaps making a first major championship final for the first time, perhaps getting that first medal. At 19, I took a Commonwealth bronze next to the great Victor Davis, who was the world champion, the Olympic champion, the world record holder, and our own Adrian Morehouse, who was a Commonwealth champion, the European champion. So for me, that was winning. That was my gold medal, even though it was a bronze, if that makes sense. But when you're at the top, when you're being gunned at, and when you have had world records, and when you've won major titles, then to retain your position is really, really sweet. So yeah, to answer your question directly, the answer undoubtedly is yes, but it depends where you're at in your sporting career.
And swimming's the sport where some meets you'd have not many people there watching, and then things like the 1988 Olympics, 1992 Olympics, you'd have full houses. How would your performance change depending on crowd size?
Yeah, I loved it. I was a big time performer. Really loved the buzz. Really loved the atmosphere. To walk out into that arena is a bit like being on stage. Really, it was almost like being in the theatre. You want to show off your talents to the best in the world. All those that love swimming, are passionate about swimming. All those spectators that are maybe witnessing swimming for the first time live, or even tuning in into the television channel. I saw an opportunity to show excellence, really, like you would do on stage, like an actor would, and it was something that I prepared for. I'd done my dress rehearsals over and over and over again, and it was time for the curtains to open, and as you've said, in swimming, there's not many of those occasions that are available. It's sort of when I was swimming, it really was once every 4 years. So it was the wow factor when the curtain drew back, and I talk a lot to young competitors about nerves and adrenaline and handling pressure and so forth. And there is a scary wow factor, but you want to be more in the wow than scared, and just take it at face value that you've worked so hard for this occasion, and go and enjoy and grab every moment that's in front of you. So for me, it was a very magical sort of experience and time of my life whenever I walked out for to live in the Olympic Games. I should to live in the village, to eat in the village, to socialise in the village, but more than that, to walk out into the lane where you're going to compete with the world watching was just really, really special.
Now, I've been struggling to sleep the last couple of weeks, and it made me think what it does to a top athlete like yourself. When you're a day before a race and you've got, say, the Olympic final or European final, Commonwealth final, the night before, what is your process to try and help you sleep? Do you work out late at night? Is there anything in particular you eat? Do you relax? Do you speak to friends? What do you do to calm yourself to make sure that you get enough sleep before a big race? Yeah,
good question again, Richard. I didn't tend to think too much that last 24 hours, you can get into overload. So I would have a very relaxing day. I would be pretty close with my roommate. There's this budding up situation, and you'd have a roommate that you understood each other. You're pretty close in terms of understanding each other's emotions, and you might have a different training or competition schedule. But you respected each other's emotions. So you had space, even though in the village it can be very busy. There's lots of people in the apartments, and you're sharing a room with somebody else outside of family. It's a strange situation and environment. Take your own pillow, though. So normal routine, don't change your routine. You'll be more rested, but it would be wrong to stay up late just chatting away or reading a book or whatever. So just try and bed down at the normal time, get up at the normal time, eat at the normal time, eat the same sorts of foods. Just keep routine. I was pretty strong at visualization imagery. I had to work hard at self-talk, so 2 psychological skills. And when I built up the race video in my mind, I would play it for the very last time the night before. And then I wouldn't see myself winning or certainly losing, but I would see myself performing the ultimate performance with rhythm and timing and pace, feel for the water, and achieving a performance time that I knew would give me a winning opportunity. I would either be inside of my body, sort of feeling my rhythm and timing, or watching the performance from the stand. I'd sort of jump in and jump out quite unexpectedly. So I came across that skill by accident, and I built it up over the years, and I would play that video and start to nod off. Wake up in the morning, all my stuff's thrown over the chairs. It's all ready. I put it in my bag. I go to the pool. I know where my goggles are. I know where my spare cap is. I know where my spare suit is if it rips when I get in for the warm-up or even for the race. And then back to you do your stuff. You go back to the village. You eat. You have lunch. You go back to bed to rest. And that actually then was quite a difficult time for me because I would have quite elevated heart rate. So most usually because I like the big time occasions, I'd swim well. Quite often a season best or a lifetime best in the morning heats. There was no semi-final, so you had to crank it in the heats to get into the final. You wanted a good lane for the final. So then now is the apprehension of we're only a few hours from the final. I've eaten, I want to sleep, but the final's going over and over and over your head. You just can't get rid of it, and it can be excitement. It might not necessarily be terrible nervous tension, so I could be lying in bed, my heart rate could be 160, and sometimes I wouldn't sleep, and then you sort of get the negative voices in your head. I've got to sleep, I need some more rest, why is my heart rate up here, I need to calm this down. And there wasn't any psychological support at all back then in the sort of the mid to late 80s, early 90s. There was Dr. Richard Cox came in, I think, in 1991, just to start to touch on the theme of sports psychology, but it was all about and breathe in and let's be calm. We didn't sort of prescribe the psychological skills that you could develop. So it was quite a raw sort of state of psychological development that in hindsight I wish that I'd have had, because it's on a silver tray these days, your psychologists, nutritionists, strength and conditioning coaches, and that would have really, really helped me. So I often woke up thinking, well, how's it going to go now? Because I haven't had the rest that I wanted to have. But, you subsequently learn that, hey, it was just an afternoon kick that I missed. Let's not be silly. So you try and rationalize with the negative voices in your head, and you go and you warm up and you have that same routine, and your warm up's good, and you hit your pace, and once again you're ready to race. It wasn't so much the night before, but it was about being prepared to have a coping strategy. But then it was throughout the next day, really, and not letting the negative voices in your head get the better of you, and to talk back. And that in itself, I've mentioned self-talk, that is a psychological skill. And I've heard Michael Phelps talk about this. You have to find the lone voice in your head, the rational voice that can talk back. And all these little, they actually call stressors, all these little ping stressor, little negative voices go running off once you find this lone rational voice. Why is it there? It's because the situation is important to you. You've worked so very hard for it, and you deserve to do well. If you weren't bothered, you wouldn't have these voices. But, you want to be on the edge of your toes. You want the adrenaline, and if that's there, it's because it's important. If it's not, well, frankly, why are you bothering? So the whole psychology sort of subject really fascinates me.
Really fascinates me as well. Nearly every guest we've had on the Best in the World podcast so far has talked about how they would visualize their next big match or final. Do you know now what you would do to try and lower your heart level down the night before a race?
I think it's just the knowing that, and understanding what the body's going through, that actually that's quite normal. And if anybody has said to me, well, let's just rewind to the age of 11. So I was 21 when I won my first Olympic medal, silver medal, and didn't have that much experience really. But at the age of 11, I'm at home in Walsall with my mum. She's a little Irish lady, 5'1", and she's putting my cornflakes on the table. And I say, I feel sick. I can't eat. I feel terribly sick. And she says, well, what do you feel sick for? And I said, well, I've got this gala. I've got this gala coming up. It's an important competition. And she said, yes, so your point is? I said, well, all these boys I'm racing, they're all better than me. They're all faster than me. And she just said, well, what have you got to lose then? And I'm thinking, yeah, those are the guys that will have the pressure because they are faster than me, stronger than me, perhaps bigger than me. So let's just get in there and do it. So the butterflies and nerves thing, it's like I said, it's there because it's important. And it wasn't any worse at the age of 21 at the Olympic Games or any World Championship or Commonwealth or European event. It was just, I guess throughout my career, I wished more people had kept reminding me it was normal and what have you got to lose. At some point in my career, because I did become world number one and world champion, Commonwealth and European champion, then it's a whole different mental environment. So my mum, if she'd have said, well, what have you got to lose? I would have gone, well, everything, my world record, my gold medals, maybe my reputation, sponsors are watching and I've won before, I've got to win again. If I don't win, have I failed? So I think there would have been an interesting sort of level of support or debate with, and I must say psychologists, not so much the coaches. The coaches are expected to have all of these skills, but you can't be an expert in every field. But an interesting debate with the psychologists around, success and failure and what is it? What does it look like? How would it feel? And not to fear failure. So it was difficult when you're at the very top. Very difficult.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like me. You're probably someone who's interested in self-improvement, learning, and just getting better in your everyday life. And I do that with audible.com. Most recently, I listened to the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Really good book. Gave me some insights into my personal finance and how I can improve in that. And you could do the same if you go to audible.com. So for you, the listeners of the Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr, Audible is offering you a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/best. Again, that's audibletrial.com/best for your free audiobook. I highly recommend it. Go do it. But for now, let's get back to Nick Gillingham.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Since you retired, I've been looking on your website. You do various things such as motivational speaking, goal setting, role model effect. What are your principles of goal setting?
Yeah, I work mainly in sport, and often high achieving young people, and often work with young people that are hard to reach as well, that need some clear direction. And it doesn't matter whether you're involved with high-performance sport or sports development, or whether you're ploughing through education, or even in and through business and in the workplace. I think if we are goal orientated, we'll be so much more successful. So, in sport, it's very obvious. You have your process goals, the day-to-day stuff, the training stuff, which allows you to perform. So then we have performance goals and targets, because that's what a goal is, it's a target. And then ultimately, that we hope that performance goal will give us the end result, the outcome goal, the outcome that we want. But all the time in sport, you hear a lot of sports people talking about the dream goal. In fact, Beckham, and one of the adverts he's doing it is called, dare I use the phrase, going beyond your goal, a particular product that's called Beyond. And I thought, wow, I didn't quite reach my dream goal to be an Olympic champion, although I did become a world champion, world record holder. I got 2 out of 3. But to go beyond that dream goal is just extraordinary, isn't it? Totally sort of extraordinary. And what a gentleman he is. I love sort of hearing Beckham speak. But having this dream goal can get us out of bed on a cold, dark winter's morning. From a 9-year-old kid, I saw the Olympic Games on television, and there was a guy with a moustache, David Wilkie, won a gold medal for Great Britain, and he was a breaststroker. That's all I could do. And I thought, well, I'm good at breaststroke. Well, I like breaststroke. Backstroke, you keep banging your head, and I'm not really very good at other stuff, but I want to be like David Wilkie. So my dream was to always go to the Olympic Games from a very, very young age, and that's a powerful thing. And if we dare to dream, I think that ultimately we'll be so much more successful, even if you don't achieve that dream goal. Okay, and I wanted to become an Olympic champion, didn't quite make it. But had I have not dared to have that vision, I wouldn't have achieved near half the stuff that I did achieve throughout the whole of my career. So ultimately, we will be so much more successful, and that then I think is a very exciting situation. And as we drive forward, we'll have the ups and downs, but ultimately we'll feel so much more fulfilled as well. Because I would hope that whatever the dream goal is for anybody out there, you're following your passions and desire for something. I love water. I love being in it, on it, around it, under it, whatever, paddling on it, enjoying it with my kids. And so, water, swimming has been a part of my life and still is. So, a lot of the long, hard days don't always feel like work. So, if you can find that and take it through your life, then fantastic is the message I would give.
So it's almost aim for the stars and hopefully you'll reach the sky. Yeah.
There's all those sayings out there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Don't just aim for the moon, reach the stars. Can you land on the moon? It's still a good result, eh?
Yeah, that would be great. Also, you spoke about your role model of getting into breaststroke. Do you have a role model now?
Do I have a role model now? Gosh. I probably do in the workplace, not so much in sport. I'm involved with, I'm a tutor and an assessor from a national governing body, so I deliver the coaching courses and qualifications, because there's no exam, so I'm the assessor, sort of the tutors of the gateway to the sport, and we have to go through quite rigorous assessment qualifications and assessment practice. And I've learned so much over the last couple of years through my own advanced practitioner, who I see as a mentor, and he's a role model for, in my opinion, for the whole workplace. And I've been quite privileged to work with him. So I've kind of moved from the sporting context into the transitioned into the work environment, if you like, but I use the word tentatively because I have a passion for what I do. So a different sort of role model is the answer there, but equally important.
Because I saw on some of the websites connected to you that there's quite a lot of stroke analysis going on. How much is technology helping the sport right now?
Oh, huge. Yeah, absolutely. We have a system called Some Optimum, which allows coaches, sports scientists to analyse a race performance very accurately and very quickly, and feed that data back so they can analyse and create a new race plan for the next competition. In fact, the next race might be that evening on the same day, so it can be done that quickly. And looking at technique and efficiencies of technique you can be big, you can be strong, you can be powerful. There's only so many millions of miles you can do throughout your career. Everyone's working very, very hard. They're full-time professional athletes, and so the technicalities of swimming are just huge. And to try and find that ultimate level of efficiency is really the key. Sort of to, I suppose, allow the magic of the water to work with you instead of, the water's your friend, don't go bashing it. So let's caress it. And my biggest strength is my technique. I'm a 6 foot wannabe, but my arms are long. And I thought, if I can't beat you on top of the water, I'll beat you underneath the water. So I used to make better space rockets than other people. So the buzzword in swimming is streamlining. So, I was and tell this to young kids, they love making space rockets. So, and I'd come off many turns, catching up my rivals who were more powerful than me, but because I was more aerodynamic, I'd be catching them up underwater while not even swimming. And I remember thinking, on many occasions how great that felt. And that's actually in a major championship final. I was very switched on to what was going on in my body. So those are the sorts of messages I like to put across. But so yes, the science of it, the analysis for technique and racing is huge, and making some of the biggest differences at the highest level. But I've already touched on the nutritionist and the psychologist, the strength and conditioning coach. I wish that I'd had a strength and conditioning coach when I was younger. My coach would say, you need to be strong, go to the gym and push those weights. Okay, I'll do that, but no real guidance or support. So it's a much bigger team around you these days at the highest level. But at a lower level, fundamentally, we need to be skillful and spend time doing skills. Don't just bash out the lengths would be my message to any young swimmer.
And you said there about being efficient in the pool. What about being efficient out of the pool? How good was your time management? How important is time management for a young athlete?
I probably spend too much time looking at the detail, minutiae as it is, but then that's kind of good for part of my job. But then my day can be very, very long because I spend too long on tasks. So I'm constantly battling against myself. And time management is an important subject to us all. But I think when the busier you are, then the more you get done. I spend quite a lot of time looking at my diary on a daily basis to find where the gaps are. Is there a gap where I could go for a half-hour run? Is there a gap where I could pick the children up from school? Is there a gap so I can go and coach my son to, because my two children have different sports. I like to spend as much spare time as I can with them and for them. So it was, a challenge, let's just say, because there's two types of people. There's process-orientated and outcome-orientated people. So I was very, very outcome-orientated. I wanted to do well. I wanted to work hard, very determined, very competitive, and just go for it. But because I struggled a lot with, if you like, nerves, high levels of anxiety and competition, if I wasn't organised, then I could crumble. So I need to spend time being organised to minimise my high levels of emotion. So being organised became a coping strategy. So I became more process orientated, but that wasn't natural to me. I'm more outcome orientated. So I just felt it was too time consuming to be organised, but I had to become that person. And so it's helped me in the workplace. And I like to think I don't miss too many deadlines. And if that means working till midnight, then I have to work till midnight to get that deadline in for tomorrow. So that's the reality of it. Maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist, as my wife says, but we all like to do a good job.
I guess that's how you break world records and become world champions. When you do get a moment, how do you unwind?
Well, I think sport and activity is an important aspect of my life. I still try and find at least 3 occasions in the week where I can go for a run, go to the gym or go for a swim. Swimming's more time consuming. It's easy to put your trainers on and just go running around the countryside. We live in a lovely neck of the woods in the United Kingdom in Northumberland, lovely beaches, castles, countryside. So I just like to get out and enjoy the fresh air, and that helps me de-stress and I have more patience for everything then. And like I've said, spend time with my children. You know, our youngest son is a swimmer, and he does triathlon as well, and he's competed in regional championships over the last 2 weekends in England and Scotland. And our eldest son, who's 15, he was shooting for the Basque Association, so he's quite good at clay pigeon shooting, skeet, and all that stuff, and getting good scores. So it's really nice to stand out, you know, even in a very cold winter's morning, and you know, the wind starts to blow, but he's enjoying himself, and I'm enjoying watching him enjoying himself. You know, so for me, that's enjoying the children is an important aspect of my life.
Are you a competitive dad at all? Because being a world champion, do you kind of push your children a bit further, or do you just let them enjoy it?
I think it surprises people to see how laid back I am. I know how tough sport is at the highest level, and I know how tough swimming was. And our children have made their own choices. They've chosen their own sports, and they're under no illusion that if they want to go the full distance, how tough it's going to be. So if anything, I'm holding them back a little bit more in terms of the expectations for long-term athlete development. You know, sort of the early mornings and swimming twice a day, and the expected meterage is something that Benjamin is aware of, but this is our youngest 13-year-old boy, but he's not he's not at that level yet. I'm sort of keeping him hungry in some sense. You know, if I would always say, "You're swimming today," and he would say yes. He would very rarely say no. If he's very tired, the words out of his mouth would be, "I need to," and I would remind him that he doesn't have to. But it's quite a good sort of psychological strength, isn't it? He's very target orientated. He has a whiteboard. He's written down what competitions he wants to qualify for, what performance times he wants to achieve for different events. So he knows that if he's not going to go training, he's probably not going to achieve those times. So he's intrinsically motivated. So for me, it's about allowing my children to take ownership of something. Ultimately, they'll make the choices and be successful because of that. And I think that's, and don't just mean successful in sport, but successful in life at whatever they choose to do. So I think, I guess from the outside looking in, people don't realise the level of support that I give. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a soft approach, but it's allowing them to make those choices, to be educated to make those choices, and ultimately at the same time then pass the ownership onto them, so that it's not me telling them to, it's them making their own decisions for themselves, and ownership is a powerful thing.
And your success meant that you became an MBE. What was it like when you met the Queen?
Daunting, yeah, the red carpet, and I remember the day very, very clearly, and sort of turn to your right, and you pace in front of the audience, and then you turn to your left, and you bow, and you take 3 paces forwards, and all this is literally rehearsed. And she offers you her hand, and she had no glove, which really surprised me. And it's obviously one of the rare occasions where the Queen, Her Majesty, doesn't wear any gloves on her hands. And she shook my hand, and she almost sort of squeezed it quite firmly, and she was talking to me. She kept on sort of shaking my hand, but in a very firm sense. And she said, bronze in Barcelona. As she presented me the MBE, she said, another one to add to your collection. It was bronze in Barcelona. I said, yes, Mum, silver in Seoul. And she said, congratulations. And nobody would have seen this, but she literally shunted me away. So when she's shaking your hand very firmly, there's a little nudge through to your shoulder that basically says, right, your time's up. Take 3 paces backwards, turn to your right, and walk off. And I nearly tripped over myself when I walked back and turned to the right. I thought, oh gosh, I better get moving. I don't want to hold anybody up, when I was relishing the moment. So it was wonderful.
Oh, well, this has been a wonderful chat as well, Nick. Nick, could you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, a little bit, anything else you want to promote, and how they can follow you on Twitter or on Facebook or any other kind of social media?
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, let me think. It's the Twitter address is @MBENick. And there's also, we're actually launching a new website soon in the coming weeks, which is Nick Gillingham Swim Academy, nickgillinghamswimacademy.com. There's also the Swim Optimum website, which is an analysis website, swimoptimum.com. But Swim at Nick Gillingham is the email address. That's quite an easy one to get in touch. That would be great.
Nick, this has been a really fantastic chat. I'll make sure everyone gets in touch. I'll put that on the page when we launch the interview. But Nick Gillingham, thank you for being the best in the world.
A pleasure. Thank you, Richard. Thanks very much.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
I think we'd all agree with the different guests we've had on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. A lot of these top athletes really learn as much after they've retired as they learned while they were competing. They're able to reflect and look back and see what they could have done to improve themselves even more. And I think Nick certainly did that. Really enjoyed the chat with him. I'm sure we'll have more swimmers on in the future on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. And of course, go back, listen to some of the other interviews. If you're into hockey, listen to Ellen Hoog. If you're into rugby, Chester Williams or David Campese, two of the best rugby players in the history of the sport. We spoke to Bodo Illgner, a footballer, and we've got many different people lined up, be it world champions, Olympic champions, from across the globe in different sports. There's only one place to be. That's here on the Best in the World with Richard Parr podcast. Download it on iTunes or on Stitcher. Don't forget you can go to my website, that's www.richardparr.net, and send me a tweet at Richard_Parr, or visit the Best in the World with Richard Parr Facebook page. So many ways to get in touch with me. Love to get your feedback on the show, but until then, I'll see you next week.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.